Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be covering. Alright, with the intro out of the way, and after thinking about it for a little while, I've realized that my main feedback on the game so far is essentially the questions I covered in my initial thoughts, so this video is sort of an impromptu part 2 to that video. Gameplay in the background is a mixture of clips, but this first one is important. This is really the only time I've taken a moment to test Bloom, and that's going to be a major part of our discussion today, so do pay attention to how the bullets land around where I'm aiming, especially with the common overrun, a gun that should be a mid-range rifle. With that in mind, we're going to start with movement. The movement feels surprisingly good, and it's well matched to the TTK in game. In fact, I'm especially fond of how fast you slide, and how different the movement feels from other games I've played, which really makes you think about how you want to approach gunfights. That's about where the good stuff ends though. Unfortunately, Marathon inhibits itself and the entire movement system because every gun in the game gets a severe accuracy reduction when strafing or moving in any way. The only exception to this is SMGs, which have slightly less bloom or loss to accuracy when strafing, as opposed to other full auto weapons. When you combine this with the generally slow handling for most guns, it makes it feel like they really don't want you to move at all in gunfights. And while I don't mind a game that makes you be more methodical in your approach to engagements, being punished for strafing with a mid-range rifle is a little too far, and it feels like they're taking a massive part of the skill in gunfights and removing it so we all just sit still when we're shooting. We'll talk more about Bloom in a moment, because it's more than just strafing that messes with your accuracy, but strafing has a pretty significant impact on accuracy / bloom compared to the other factors, and as you can see when I'm shooting the overrun, it has far more bloom than you would expect for a weapon that's meant to be used in mid-range engagements. My other major complaint regarding movement is the agility system. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad we can improve our agility with faction upgrades because there are many jump spots around the map that are just barely out of reach at your base level, so it's nice to be able to upgrade your jump to reach those without using glitch, but the downside is that these faction upgrades wipe every season, and that means each season we're all going to have to relearn the jump spots that we can access and cannot access until we get those agility improvements. This isn't a problem for glitch, but for every other character it's a major nuisance, and overall it just leads to bad engagements. You can use mods to improve your agility too, but those aren't a guarantee to drop, and even if they do, there are better options for that slot as well, making it tough to want to use those mods and improve your agility as opposed to improving something like your total amount of stamina. Stepping back for a moment, let's talk about engagements with players. For example, let's say there's a team on a roof. If I can only reach that roof or other high ground via one of two ladders, all of a sudden, everyone can just camp ladders, and pushing teams with the high ground becomes impossible. This is something we saw in Call of Duty Warzone early on, and from that experience we know it's not a fun way to engage players or build player engagements in a large-scale PvP world. For both of these reasons, I feel the game could use a go fast style update like what we saw in the Forsaken era of Destiny. Now, I could go on and on about how I'd like to see this game be more like Apex Legends, and how the map design and the square buildings kind of lend themselves well to that type of advanced movement, but at the end of the day, I don't think Bungie will do anything close to what we see in Apex, and instead, I think it's more likely that they improve on what we have, such as providing a little more stamina before you overheat, and making it easier to jump onto roofs and approach high ground fights in different ways. Again, the core mechanics of the movement are good. We just need more of that movement, and for the game to not punish players for utilizing it. Next, I mentioned it, but now I just want to go on a bit of a rant about it. The bloom is far worse than anything I had expected or mentioned in my initial video. As a reminder for everyone, every gun in the game has a cone of accuracy, kind of like an invisible funnel going out from the barrel, and bloom is the term used for when this cone gets wider. For example, when you strafe, jump, or shoot while aiming from the hip, you can see that reticle expanding, and that expansion is actually bloom. There's also several sights in the game that show your bloom while aiming down sights, and the game does a good job overall of showing you the effects of bloom, but I've had shots miss people at 15 meters because I was strafing and shooting a full auto weapon. Even though I was aiming directly at the target, it didn't make a difference, and that's because these negative effects stack, which to me, the fact that these different effects stack on each other is really the main problem holding gunplay back. I think if you're looking for a good example of this, look at the overrun and the LMG. Both weapons suffer a lot from lost accuracy due to these two effects stacking together. I do want to note that I think Bloom could not only work, but help make this game better, just not with the current setup. A great example is having it affect snipers while strafing. This makes sense as a way to balance snipers, forcing the player to sit still briefly to take the shot means that they also risk being shot at while sitting still, and having a little bit of risk-reward trade-off like that is a really good thing in games. Additionally, having full auto weapons become less accurate the longer they fire makes sense on SMGs, weapons which should be used for close range, and by having a lot of bloom on SMGs, you still allow players to tap fire them in short bursts at distance to help with team shotting, and allow them to be effective in close range where bloom isn't as important. However, the fact that all weapons experience bloom from both shooting at a high rate of fire and moving, and other debuffs like jumping and sliding which also reduce accuracy, it really makes the guns feel bad, and it doesn't help that each of these effects on their own have a lot of bloom, not to mention when they stack together. There are attachments in the game to help with this, but after 55 and actually 60 hours of playing now, I've found 2 purple guns, one I made by adding attachments and one I found on a body, and overall those weapons still experience accuracy loss when strafing and shooting, even though it's at a lower amount. With how rare purple guns are, and I haven't even seen a gold attachment yet, the game can't be balanced around the idea that you'll always have the best stuff to offset the negative effects of bloom. So I'd really like to see either an overall reduction to bloom, or they make attachments at the green and blue level a little bit more impactful on the amount of accuracy you gain from having them. Also, if Bungie does review this area, I think I'd like to see the following change considered. Make it so that precision weapons experience no accuracy loss when strafing, but they do lose accuracy progressively when you're firing at them at the maximum rate of fire. While this wouldn't be the biggest change, since precision weapons don't have the most bloom of any weapon class, in fact from what I've experienced they have the least, this does discourage players from mashing the trigger and rewards a player who learns to shoot semi-auto and burst weapons in a cadence. It also requires some thought, as you may have to decide whether you can wait the extra few milliseconds for your bloom to go down, or take your next shot before the enemy gets to cover. Similarly, snipers and SMGs, as mentioned, snipers should see a minor accuracy loss while moving, and since they already shoot slow, there's no point in adding bloom for shooting them at the max rate of fire. It would be better to just increase the recoil at that point so you can at least know where your bullets are going. SMGs, on the other hand, should not have any bloom while strafing, because players should be encouraged to strafe and move with close range weapons, but they should have a substantial amount of bloom in full auto, and by substantial I basically mean something like what we have now, since we already have quite a bit of bloom. Speaking of SMGs, I do think they need to hand tune the bloom on SMGs further. The bully shoots significantly slower than the Burt, and as a result it maintains accuracy much longer when firing as fast as possible. In fact, you may have noticed in the initial clip, the bully and SMG seems more accurate when strafing and shooting than the Overrun, which is a rifle that's meant for much longer range. I believe this is one of the reasons the bully is so good, because in testing the Burt kills extremely fast and has a slightly faster TTK than the bully, but it's almost impossible to reach an optimal TTK with the Burt when each burst essentially maxes out the bloom. And by the time you reach the final bullet in each burst, you're lucky to hit the target past 20 meters, not to mention trying to hit a headshot. If you are moving while shooting, the gun basically turns into a bullet sprinkler, shooting shots in all directions. The bully, on the other hand, is highly accurate, and even when strafing, you can land shots at distance with it. Lastly, I believe the rifles just need a massive reduction in all areas of bloom. I'd like to see rifles balanced by them having no bloom and instead trading that for a slightly slower TTK than precision rifles at long range and SMGs at close range, but I doubt that'll happen, so a large reduction in felt accuracy loss from all sources should be fine. On top of that, I'll just say it, I hate the LMG. I refused to use it after I watched it entirely miss someone I was aimed at from 10 meters away, and because I was strafing and shooting at full auto at the same time and it loses accuracy really quickly when shooting full auto, there was just none of my shots hit. So I don't like the LMG, I won't use it anymore, and I don't have any opinion on it beyond that right now. Alright, I know that was a lot, so we'll just move over to aim assist. This one's going to be quick, I promise. They're removing or have removed M&K aim assist, and I'm hopeful that they'll reduce controller aim assist, as I find it annoying how high it is right now, especially when you're using a high zoom optic or the high zoom optic. I'm a controller player, and I would still really like to see the aim assist reduced slightly on controller for this game. Okay, final notes as we come to the end here. I think that the environment damage in the grenades are a bit too strong. For the environment damage slash the kind of poison effect you get from chem grenades, I can't quite tell if the poison effect is just really strong or if it's only good because there aren't really any visual or auditory cues that you are poisoned. I imagine this will be changed because as it stands right now, there aren't many visual or auditory cues for taking any kind of shield damage at all. It is still frustrating that you don't have any changes or noise when you're poisoned in particular. It just shows the little symbol in the left corner, and since the effect lasts 12 seconds and takes away 75% of your HP during that time, it would be nice to have a more clear sign that I'm poisoned so I can know to pop a mechanics kit. And the same is true of being shot at, by the way. You don't flinch, move, or make any noise when your shields get hit unless they break, and sometimes I don't realize I've been shot at until my shields break. Again, I imagine this will be updated in the live game, but I wanted to make a note here just in case. And looking at the more clear issue beyond that, I would like to see that all of the grenade types deal less damage, including a nerf to the chem grenades in particular to reduce their damage and duration. Particularly with chem grenades, I would like to see them balanced so that the longer you stand in the grenade, the more damage you take, and the longer the effect lasts when you leave that AoE field. I think the game is good. Maybe a little meh, but definitely not bad. I think the gunplay is the main thing this title has going for it, and outside of gunplay, I'm just kind of okay on all the other aspects of the game. When it comes down to it, I think this title is going to require a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot from Bungie to bring it up to what we call the standard of gaming for them, since they've made so many great titles in the past. At the end of the day, this is more of a